I never thought I'd hear my own name screaming through the crackling of flames. But before I tell you about that night, you need to understand how I got there. My name is Marcus Webb, and I've been a firefighter with the Seattle Fire Department for 12 years. 12 years of running into burning buildings while everyone else runs out. 12 years of saving lives, losing some, and carrying the weight of every single face I couldn't reach in time. It was a cold November evening in Seattle when everything changed. The rain had been pouring for 3 days straight, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon lights. I was sitting in the common room at Station 18, watching the Seahawks game with my crew. Jenkins was making his terrible chili again, the kind that could strip paint off walls. Rodriguez was giving him hell about it, as usual. Captain Morrison was in his office doing paperwork. It was a quiet night, the kind that makes you grateful and nervous at the same time. My phone buzzed. A text from my ex-wife, Sarah. "Can we talk about Thanksgiving? Emma wants to know if you'll be there." Emma. My daughter. 8 years old with my dark eyes and Sarah's stubborn spirit. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, and every text from Sarah felt like reopening a wound that refused to heal. I hadn't been there for Emma's last 3 birthdays because of work. I'd missed her school play. I'd become the dad who showed up in uniform with apologies instead of presents. I was typing a response when the alarm blared through the station. The sound still makes my heart jump after all these years. Everyone moved at once. We'd done this dance 1,000 times. Boots on, gear grabbed, truck rolling within 90 seconds. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio. Structure fire, residential building, possible occupants trapped, address on Pine Street in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. The streets were slick as we raced through downtown Seattle. The Space Needle stood illuminated against the dark sky, oblivious to the emergency unfolding below. The rain hammered against the windshield. Captain Morrison was going over assignments. Rodriguez and Jenkins would handle the west side. Thompson and I would take the east entrance. Standard approach for a residential fire. But nothing about this fire would be standard. We saw the smoke before we saw the building. Thick, black columns rising into the rainy sky, lit from below by orange and yellow flames. The apartment complex was older, one of those 1970 structures that went up like matchboxes when they caught fire. 4 stories, maybe 30 units. People were already outside in their pajamas and robes, huddled under the awning of the building across the street. Some were crying. Others were on their phones. A few just stared at the flames with blank expressions, shock written across their faces. I jumped out of the truck before it fully stopped. The heat hit me immediately, even from 50 feet away. Captain Morrison was already talking to a woman in a gray bathrobe. She was gesturing wildly at the building, her face streaked with tears and rain. I couldn't hear what she was saying over the roar of the fire and the sound of water being deployed by the first engine company on scene. Thompson and I geared up, checking each other's equipment with practiced efficiency. SCBA masks on. Air tanks secured. Thermal imaging camera in hand. We'd cleared buildings together for 6 years. He was the closest thing I had to a best friend, though neither of us would ever say it out loud. We communicated in glances and nods, a language built through shared danger. Captain Morrison grabbed my shoulder. His face was grim behind his helmet. 3rd floor is fully involved. 4th floor is spreading fast. We've got reports of at least 3 people still inside. Elderly man on the 2nd floor, couple on the 4th. Get in, get them out, get back here. This building won't hold much longer. I nodded. My mouth was dry despite the rain soaking through my gear. This was the job. This was what I'd signed up for. But every time I ran into a burning building, a small voice in the back of my head asked if this would be the last time. If Emma would have to grow up telling people her dad died being a hero, which was just another way of saying he wasn't there. The lobby was thick with smoke. Visibility was maybe 3 feet. The heat was intense even through my gear. Thompson was right behind me, his light cutting through the darkness. We found the stairs and started climbing. The elderly man was supposed to be in apartment 2C. We moved fast but careful. Stairs can collapse. Floors can give way. The building groans and creaks, trying to tell you when it's about to fail. You learn to listen to those sounds. Second floor hallway. The smoke was lighter here. Most of it was rising to the upper floors. We found 2C and kicked in the door. The apartment was full of smoke, but not flames yet. Thompson swept left, I went right. Found him in the bedroom, collapsed next to his bed. Probably overcome by smoke, trying to get dressed. He was unconscious but breathing. Thompson and I got him up between us, moving him toward the hallway. We handed him off to Rodriguez at the stairs. He'd carry him down while we went up. The couple on the 4th floor still needed us. Every second counted. The fire was spreading fast, feeding on the old wood and cheap construction materials. The heat was getting more intense. Sweat poured down my face inside my mask. We climbed to the 3rd floor, and that's when we saw how bad it really was. The entire hallway was engulfed. Flames covered the ceiling, crawling along the walls. The carpet was melting beneath our feet. We couldn't get through to the stairs that led to the 4th floor. Not without a hose line, and the crews outside were still setting up their positions. Thompson grabbed my arm and pointed to the thermal camera. He was showing me something. Heat signatures on the 4th floor, 2 of them, but they weren't moving. We needed another way up. Fire escape. We backed out and went around the building's exterior. The rain was actually helping, keeping the outside walls cooler. We found the fire escape on the east side, a rusty metal structure that swayed slightly as we climbed. 4th floor window. Thompson smashed it with his axe, and we climbed through into an apartment. The smoke here was thick and hot. The fire hadn't reached this unit yet, but it would soon. We could hear it roaring somewhere close, like a living thing hunting for fuel. We found the couple in the hallway outside their apartment. They'd tried to run, but the smoke got them. Both unconscious. Thompson took the woman, I took the man. He was heavy, dead weight across my shoulders. My legs burned as I carried him back toward the window we'd come through. The smoke was getting thicker. My air tank was reading 20 minutes left. Plenty of time, I told myself, even though I knew better than to trust those numbers when you're moving slow with a victim. We got them to the window. Thompson went first with the woman, carefully maneuvering her through the frame and onto the fire escape. I was right behind him with the man when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A voice. A child's voice. Calling through the smoke and flames. Marcus. Marcus, help me. I froze. The man on my shoulders suddenly felt like he weighed 1,000 pounds. That voice. High and scared and desperate. It knew my name. Thompson was already on the fire escape, looking back at me, gesturing for me to hurry. The building groaned. Something crashed inside the apartment behind us. The fire was getting closer. But that voice. That child's voice. It was coming from deeper inside the building, from somewhere in the flames. No child should have known my name. No child should have been calling for me specifically. But I heard it clear as day, cutting through the roar of the fire. Marcus. Please. I'm scared. Thompson was yelling at me now. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew what he was saying. Move. Get out. The building is failing. My training screamed the same thing. You don't go deeper into a structure fire without backup. You don't chase voices when you've got a victim to evacuate. You follow protocol. You stay alive. But that voice. It sounded so much like Emma. I handed the man through the window to Thompson. Our eyes met through our masks. I saw confusion, then understanding, then fear in his expression. He knew what I was about to do. He was shaking his head, grabbing for my arm, but I pulled back. I turned and went back into the smoke, toward the voice calling my name. Behind me, I heard Thompson shouting, but his words were swallowed by the fire. My air gauge read 15 minutes. The hallway ahead was a tunnel of flames. Every instinct I developed over 12 years told me this was suicide. But I kept moving forward, because somewhere in that inferno, a child was calling my name, and I couldn't walk away. Not this time. Not again. The heat was unbearable. Even through my turnout gear, it felt like being inside an oven. The flames had consumed most of the 4th floor hallway, crawling across the ceiling in hungry waves of orange and red. The wallpaper was peeling and curling, releasing toxic smoke. The carpet beneath my feet was melting, making each step stick and pull. Every breath I took through my SCBA mask tasted like fear and burning plastic. Marcus! Help me! Please! The voice was clearer now, more desperate. It was coming from the end of the hallway, from an apartment whose door was already half consumed by flames. I could see the number through the smoke and fire. 4F. My thermal imaging camera showed a heat signature inside, small and low to the ground. A child. Actually there. This wasn't my imagination or the fire playing tricks on my oxygen-deprived brain. I keyed my radio. Webb to Morrison. I've got a child trapped in 4F. Requesting immediate backup and a hose line to the 4th floor east side. Static. Then Morrison's voice, strained and urgent. Webb, the 4th floor is about to collapse. We're losing the structural integrity. Get out now. That's an order. There's a kid in here, Captain. I can't leave. Marcus. Morrison rarely used first names on the radio. The building won't hold. We've got maybe 2 minutes before that whole floor comes down. 2 minutes. I looked at my air gauge. 12 minutes left. Plenty of time to grab a kid and get out, if everything went perfectly. But nothing in a fire ever goes perfectly. The door to 4F was ahead of me, flames licking around its frame. I could feel the floor starting to sag beneath my weight. The building was groaning, that low creaking sound that meant supports were failing. I thought about Emma. About the last time I'd seen her, 3 weeks ago, when I picked her up for a Sunday that I'd had to cut short because of a call. She'd been quiet in the truck, playing with the zipper on her jacket. Finally, she'd asked me why I didn't live with her and Mommy anymore. How do you explain adult failures to an 8-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that you chose the job over the family so many times that eventually there was no family left to choose? I told her that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, but that I loved her more than anything. She'd nodded, not really believing me. Kids are smart that way. They know when you're telling the truth and when you're just saying words. I love you too, Daddy, she'd said. But I wish you loved me more than the fires. The memory hit me like a physical blow. That's what I'd become. A man who loved fires more than his own daughter. A man who found it easier to run into burning buildings than to sit at a kitchen table and be present for the people who needed him. Not this time. This time, I was going to save this kid. This time, I was going to be the person I wanted Emma to think I was. I kicked the door to 4F. It gave way easier than expected, the wood already weakened by fire. Inside was chaos. The living room was fully involved, flames eating through furniture and walls. The heat was so intense that my helmet felt like it was melting. I swept the thermal camera across the room. There, in the corner, behind an overturned couch, a small figure, huddled and still. I moved fast, crawling beneath the smoke layer, keeping low where the air was slightly cooler. The floor felt soft and unstable. I could hear it cracking beneath me. 10 feet to the couch. 8 feet. 5 feet. My gloved hand reached the couch and I pushed it aside. A little girl. Maybe 6 years old. Dark hair, wearing blue pajamas with stars on them. Her eyes were closed and she wasn't moving. I checked for a pulse. Weak but there. She'd been overcome by smoke. I scooped her up, tucking her against my chest inside my coat to protect her from the flames. That's when the floor gave way. Not the whole floor, just a section right where I'd been standing. My left leg dropped through, into the apartment below. I caught myself on the edge, the little girl still pressed against my chest. Fire erupted through the hole, flames from the 3rd floor reaching up like hands trying to pull me down. The heat was incredible. I felt something in my leg snap, bright pain shooting up through my body. I pulled myself up and out of the hole, dragging my injured leg. Something was definitely broken. Every movement sent waves of agony through my body, but I couldn't stop. The building was coming apart. I could feel it in the way the walls were shifting, in the sound of supports failing throughout the structure. The girl in my arms stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. She looked at me through the smoke and flames. "Marcus," she whispered. "You came." My blood went cold. How did she know my name? I'd never seen this child before in my life. There had been no briefing about a child who knew me, No connection to anyone I knew in this building. But she'd called my name. She'd called specifically for me. "How do you know who I am?" I asked, crawling toward the door with her in my arms, dragging my broken leg behind me. She didn't answer. Her eyes closed again. I could feel her breathing, shallow and rapid against my chest. She was alive, but barely. I needed to get her out. The hallway was worse than before. The ceiling was sagging, and I could see daylight through gaps where the roof was starting to fail. The fire escape window seemed impossibly far away. Thompson's voice crackled through my radio, broken and desperate. "Marcus, where are you? The building is coming down. Please, man, get out of there. I've got her. I'm coming." My air gauge read 7 minutes. My legs screamed with every movement. The little girl was a dead weight in my arms. I crawled forward, inch by inch, through flames and smoke. The heat was so intense that I could feel my gear starting to fail. My hands were burning inside my gloves. My back felt like someone was holding a blowtorch to it. Behind me, I heard the unmistakable sound of a floor collapsing. The apartment I'd just been in was gone, dropped into the inferno below. The hallway floor was starting to buckle. I had seconds, not minutes. I made it to the window. Thompson was there, reaching through from the fire escape. His face behind his mask was pale with fear and relief. He grabbed the little girl from my arms and pulled her through. Then he reached back for me. That's when the floor beneath me gave way completely. I fell into darkness and flames, my hand just missing Thompson's grasp. The last thing I saw was his face, horrified and helpless, before the smoke and fire swallowed everything. I hit something hard. Not the bottom floor, but a partially collapsed section of the third floor that had created a pocket in the wreckage. Pain exploded through my body, my broken leg, my ribs, my shoulder. I couldn't breathe. My SCBA mask had been knocked loose in the fall. Smoke filled my lungs. I coughed, gasping, trying to find air that didn't burn. Above me, I could hear Thompson screaming my name. The radio was still working, barely, filled with voices. Morrison ordering crews to get a ladder to my position. Rodriguez saying the building was too unstable. Thompson saying he was coming in after me. Morrison ordering him to stand down. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. The pain was overwhelming. Through the smoke, I could see flames on all sides, closing in. My air tank had been damaged in the fall. The gauge was reading 0. No air left. I was breathing pure smoke now, each breath agony. This was how it ended. 12 years of running into fires, and finally one of them caught me. I thought about Emma. About Sarah. About all the moments I'd missed, all the choices I'd made that led me to this moment, dying alone in a burning building. But I wasn't alone. Through the smoke and flames, I saw a figure. Small. Moving toward me. The little girl. But that was impossible. Thompson had pulled her out. She was safe on the fire escape. She couldn't be here. She knelt beside me, her face clear despite the smoke, her blue pajamas somehow untouched by the flames surrounding us. She put her small hand on my chest. "Not yet, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and clear. "You still have work to do. You still have someone who needs you." "Emma," I managed to whisper, my voice raw and broken. The little girl smiled. "You're going to be okay. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be there. Promise me you won't choose the fire anymore." The flames were getting closer. The heat was unbearable. I could feel consciousness slipping away. But I nodded. I promised. The little girl stood up and walked into the flames. I tried to call after her, but I had no voice left. The smoke filled my vision. Everything went dark. The last thing I heard was the sound of my crew breaking through the wall behind me, Thompson's voice shouting my name, hands grabbing my gear and pulling me backward through the wreckage and smoke towards safety and light. I woke up to the sound of machines beeping and the smell of antiseptic. Hospital. I'd been in enough emergency rooms over the years to recognize them instantly. My mouth tasted like ash and blood. My whole body felt like one giant bruise. When I tried to move, pain shot through my left leg and I gasped. "Easy. A nurse appeared beside me, adjusting something on one of the machines. "You're at Harborview. You've been here for 2 days. Don't try to move yet. You've got a broken leg, 3 cracked ribs, a separated shoulder, and significant smoke inhalation. You're lucky to be alive. 2 days. I've been unconscious for 2 days." Memories flooded back. The fire. The little girl. The floor collapsing. The girl appearing to me in the flames. That couldn't have been real. Oxygen deprivation. Smoke inhalation. My brain playing tricks in a life-or-death situation. "The girl," I croaked out, my voice barely working. "The little girl I pulled out. Is she okay?" The nurse's expression changed, became careful. "Let me get your doctor. He'll want to know you're awake." She left before I could ask again. I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles, trying to piece together what had happened. The girl had called my name. She'd known who I was. And then, after the floor collapsed, she'd appeared to me again. Or I'd hallucinated her. Had to be a hallucination. Except it had felt so real. Her hand on my chest. Her voice telling me I had work to do. The door opened again. Captain Morrison walked in, followed by Thompson. Both of them looked exhausted. Thompson had bandages on his hands and a cut above his left eye. Morrison looked like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him. "You stupid, reckless idiot," Morrison said, but there was relief in his voice. He pulled up a chair beside my bed. Thompson stood at the foot, his arms crossed, his face a mixture of anger and concern. "Good to see you too, Captain," I managed. "Do you have any idea how close you came to killing yourself? And Thompson, he was ready to dive back into that building after you. We had to physically restrain him." I looked at Thompson. "Sorry, man." He shook his head. "You don't get to apologize. You don't get to scare me like that and then just say sorry. That building collapsed 30 seconds after we pulled you out. 30 seconds, Marcus. You almost died for that kid. But I didn't. And neither did she. That's what matters." Morrison and Thompson exchanged a look. Something passed between them, something I didn't understand. "Marcus," Morrison said carefully, "we need to talk about what happened in that building. I pulled a kid out of 4F. She was trapped. I heard her calling for help. For me, specifically. She knew my name, Captain." "How did she know my name?" Another exchange of looks. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. "Marcus, there was no child in apartment 4F, Morrison said quietly. The machines around me seemed to get louder. The beeping synchronized with my suddenly racing heartbeat. "What are you talking about?" "I carried her out. Thompson pulled her through the window. I saw him take her." Thompson stepped closer. "I pulled you through the window, Marcus." "Just you?" "There was no little girl." The room tilted. "No. That was impossible. I'd held her. I'd felt her weight in my arms. I'd looked into her eyes. She'd been real. She was there," I insisted. 6 years old, dark hair, blue pajamas with stars. She was overcome by smoke in the corner of the apartment behind a couch. "I carried her out." Morrison pulled out his phone and showed me something. A photo. The interior of apartment 4F, taken after the fire was extinguished. The apartment was destroyed, but I could still see the layout. There was no couch. The corner where I'd found the girl was just an empty space, completely burnt out. Apartment 4F was vacant, Morrison explained. It had been empty for 3 weeks. The previous tenant moved out. There was no furniture, no one living there. We checked the building's records. We interviewed every resident. No one matching that description was reported missing. No child was in that building, Marcus. I felt like the floor was collapsing again. But I heard her. She called my name. She said, "Marcus, help me." She knew who I was. "You were in an oxygen-deprived state," Thompson said gently. "Extreme stress, smoke inhalation, a building actively collapsing around you. Your brain was trying to process everything. Sometimes in situations like that, we hear things, see things. Auditory and visual hallucinations are common in near-death experiences, especially in fires, Morrison added. The brain tries to make sense of the chaos. You've been under tremendous stress, Marcus. The divorce, missing time with Emma. Your mind could have created this to give you a reason to keep fighting, to survive. I wanted to argue, to insist that she'd been real. But lying in that hospital bed, hearing their explanations, seeing the photo of the empty apartment, doubt crept in. Had I imagined her? Had my oxygen-starved brain conjured up a little girl to save, a way to prove to myself that I could still be the hero, still be the dad Emma deserved? But what about after? After the floor collapsed? She'd appeared to me in the flames. She'd touched my chest and made me promise something. Promise me you won't choose the fire anymore. Those words had been so clear, so real. The elderly man from 2C is fine, Morrison continued, changing the subject. Minor smoke inhalation. The couple from the 4th floor are both in intensive care but expected to recover. You saved 3 lives that night, Marcus. Real lives. You're being recommended for a commendation. I didn't care about commendations. I cared about the little girl who might or might not have existed, who might have been a product of my failing mind in a moment of crisis. The door opened again. Sarah walked in, and the expression on her face made my heart sink. She looked terrified and angry at the same time. Behind her was Emma, holding her mother's hand, her eyes wide as she took in all the machines and bandages. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to smile. Emma didn't run to me like she used to when she was younger. She stayed close to Sarah, uncertain. Sarah's jaw was tight. "Can you guys give us a minute?" she asked Morrison and Thompson. They left quickly, closing the door behind them. Sarah pulled a chair close to the bed but didn't sit. Emma stood beside her, still not looking directly at me. "They called me 2 days ago," Sarah said, her voice shaking. 2 in the morning. They said you'd been pulled from a collapsed building. That you were in critical condition. That I should come to the hospital because they didn't know if you'd make it." "Sarah, I'm sorry. Do you know what that was like? Getting that call? Having to explain to Emma that her father might die? She hasn't slept, Marcus. She's been having nightmares. She keeps asking me if you're going to disappear like you did when we got divorced." The words hit harder than any physical pain. I looked at Emma, really looked at her. She seemed smaller than I remembered, more fragile. Her eyes were red from crying. "Emma, come here, please," I said softly. She hesitated, then slowly walked to the side of the bed. I reached out my good hand and she took it, her small fingers wrapping around mine. "I'm okay," I told her. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "Mommy said you almost died saving people from a fire," she said quietly. "She said you're a hero." "I was doing my job, sweetie." "But what about us?" Her voice cracked. "What about being my dad? Is that your job too, or just the fire thing?" Sarah put a hand on Emma's shoulder but didn't stop her. This conversation needed to happen. I'd been avoiding it for too long. "You're right," I said, and it hurt more than admitting it to myself ever had. "I haven't been the dad you deserve. I kept choosing the fires over you. I kept thinking that saving other people was more important than being there for you. I was wrong, Emma. I was so wrong." Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "I don't want you to die in a fire, Daddy. I want you to come to my school stuff. I want you to be there for my birthday. I want you to be my dad, not everyone else's hero. The promise. Promise me you won't choose the fire anymore." Whether the little girl had been real or a hallucination, the message was the same. I'd been given a second chance. A chance to finally get it right. "I promise," I said, squeezing Emma's hand. "I promise I'm going to be there. No more missing birthdays. No more choosing work over you. You are the most important thing in my life, and I'm going to start showing you that." Emma threw her arms around me, careful of my injuries. She sobbed into my hospital gown. I held her with my good arm, tears streaming down my own face. Sarah was crying too, trying to hide it but failing. Over the next week, as I recovered in the hospital, I had a lot of time to think. Morrison came by and told me I'd be on medical leave for at least 3 months while my leg healed. Physical therapy after that. Maybe 6 months total before I could return to active duty. If I wanted to return at all. Thompson visited every day. On the 4th day, he brought me a newspaper. The fire had made the front page. 3 people rescued. 1 firefighter critically injured. The building had been a total loss. The cause was determined to be faulty wiring in a 3rd-floor apartment. Nothing suspicious. Just old infrastructure and bad luck. There was a sidebar article about apartment 4F. About how it had been empty. About how I'd risked my life for a child that didn't exist. The article was sympathetic, talking about the psychological toll of firefighting, about how heroes sometimes broke under the weight of what they carried. It made me sound tragic. Broken. Don't read that garbage, Thompson said, taking the paper away. You saved 3 lives. That's what matters. The rest is just noise. But it wasn't noise to me. I needed to understand what had happened in that building. Real or hallucination, the little girl had changed everything. She'd shown me what I was becoming. What I'd already become. A man so dedicated to saving strangers that he'd lost the people who actually knew his name. A week after waking up, I had another visitor. A woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. She introduced herself as Dr. Patricia Reeves, a psychologist who specialized in working with first responders. Captain Morrison asked me to check in on you, she explained, settling into the chair beside my bed. How are you feeling? Physically? Like I got hit by a truck. Emotionally? I'm not sure yet. She smiled slightly. Tell me about the little girl. So I did. I told her everything. How I'd heard her call my name. How she'd known me. How I'd found her in the empty apartment. How she'd appeared to me after I fell. What she'd said. The promise she'd made me make. Dr. Reeves listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Do you believe she was real? She finally asked. I don't know anymore. Everyone tells me she wasn't. The evidence says she wasn't. But it felt so real. In extreme situations, our brains can create very vivid experiences. But that doesn't make them meaningless. Whether she was real or not, what did she represent to you? I thought about it. Really thought about it. She represented everything I've been failing at. She was calling my name because that's what Emma does. She needs me and I'm never there. The girl made me face that. And the promise. To stop choosing the fire over the people I love. To be present. To actually be a father to my daughter instead of just someone who sends birthday presents and apologies. Dr. Reeves nodded. Trauma has a way of forcing us to confront truths we've been avoiding. Whether that little girl existed in reality or only in your mind in that moment of crisis, she delivered a message you needed to hear. One you'd been ignoring for a long time. So I had a breakdown. That's what everyone thinks, right? The firefighter who cracked under pressure. I think you had a moment of profound clarity in the worst possible circumstances. And I think you're at a crossroads now, Marcus. You can go back to Station 18 when you heal, go back to running into burning buildings and missing your daughter's life. Or you can make a different choice. 3 months later, I stood in the parking lot of Station 18, my legs still aching despite being out of the cast for 2 weeks. Physical therapy had been brutal. Learning to walk properly again. Building back muscle. Dealing with the chronic pain that the doctors said might never fully go away. The limp was barely noticeable now, but I felt it with every step. My truck was packed with 12 years of accumulated gear and memories. Photos from the station. My helmet. Certificates and commendations I'd never bothered to hang anywhere. Awards that had seemed so important at the time. Plaques with my name engraved on them. All of it going into boxes, heading to a storage unit because I didn't have room for it in my new apartment. The apartment was smaller than the house I'd shared with Sarah, but it was close to Emma's school. Walking distance. I'd signed the lease 2 weeks ago, choosing location over space. Choosing proximity to my daughter over convenience for work. Because I wasn't coming back to work. Not as a firefighter. The decision had taken months to solidify. Morrison had called every few weeks during my recovery, checking in, telling me my spot would be waiting when I was cleared. Thompson had visited regularly, bringing news from the station, trying to maintain the connection. Jenkins had even brought his terrible chili to my apartment once, filling the place with that awful smell while we watched a Seahawks game. But I knew. Deep down, I'd known since that moment in the flames when the little girl had made me promise. Some people could balance this job with family. Morrison did it. Thompson did it. But I'd proven over 12 years that I couldn't. Every time I got the choice between Emma and the fire, I chose the fire. Not consciously. Not maliciously. But I chose it anyway. The station door opened and Captain Morrison stepped out. He looked older in the morning light, the weight of command showing in the lines around his eyes. He walked over to my truck, hands in his pockets. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm sure. You're one of the best firefighters I've ever worked with, Marcus. This department needs people like you." "Emma needs me more." Morrison nodded slowly. He understood. He'd made it work with his own family, but he'd seen plenty of others who couldn't. The divorce rate among firefighters was staggering for a reason. "The Fire Academy is always looking for good instructors," he said. "Teaching new recruits. Regular hours. Weekends off. The pay isn't as good, but the benefits are solid. I could make a call if you're interested." It was a lifeline. A way to stay connected to the job without the constant call-outs, the missed birthdays, the 3 a.m. emergencies. Teaching the next generation how to do what I'd done. How to maybe do it better. How to not make the mistakes I'd made. "I'd appreciate that, Captain." He extended his hand. I shook it. 12 years ending with a handshake in a parking lot. It felt anticlimactic. But then, that's how most endings were. Quiet. Personal. Not dramatic. Thompson came out next, along with Rodriguez and Jenkins. They'd heard I was coming to clean out my locker. We stood there in an awkward circle, men who'd faced death together but didn't know how to say goodbye. "So that's it," Rodriguez said finally. "You're really done?" "I'm really done. Active duty, anyway. Morrison's getting me set up at the academy. I'll still be around, just not in the field." Jenkins punched my shoulder lightly. "You better still come to the Christmas party. And bring that daughter of yours. We've been hearing about her for years, but never met her." The thought made me smile. Emma at a fire station Christmas party. She'd love it. She'd always wanted to see where I worked, but I'd kept her away, keeping those worlds separate. Maybe that had been part of the problem. Compartmentalizing everything instead of integrating it. "I'll be there," I promised. Thompson walked me to my truck. We loaded the last box together in silence. When it was done, he leaned against the tailgate, arms crossed. "I'm still pissed at you for that stunt you pulled," he said. "Going after a ghost. Nearly getting yourself killed." "I know. But I get it. I mean, I don't get it fully. But I get that you had to do something. That you were at a breaking point. The girl wasn't real, Thompson. I know that now. But what she made me see was real. I was destroying the most important relationship in my life because I couldn't let go of this job." Thompson was quiet for a long moment. "My kid's recital is next Thursday. Ballet. She's been practicing for months. I already told Morrison I'm taking the day off, no matter what calls come in. You inspired that man. Made me think about my priorities. That meant more than any commendation. If my breakdown, my moment of crisis, could help even one other firefighter avoid the mistakes I'd made, then maybe it was worth it." "Go to that recital," I said. "Take pictures. Embarrass her afterward by crying. Trust me, you'll regret it forever if you don't." We shook hands. Then, awkwardly, hugged. Thompson was the closest thing I'd had to a best friend for 6 years, and I was walking away from that too. But some things required sacrifice. Some choices meant losing things you valued to gain things you needed more. I drove away from Station 18 for the last time as a firefighter. The Space Needle rose in the distance, that iconic symbol of Seattle stabbing into the gray sky. Rain was starting to fall, because of course it was. This was Seattle. The rain was as much a part of the city as the coffee shops and tech companies. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Emma's school play is tomorrow night. She has a speaking part. Starts at 7. Don't be late. 3 months ago, that text would have filled me with dread and guilt, knowing I'd probably have to cancel because of work. Now it just filled me with anticipation. I texted back, "I'll be there at 6:30. Wouldn't miss it." That afternoon, I went to Emma's school. Lincoln Elementary, a brick building in the Ballard neighborhood with a playground full of kids enjoying recess despite the drizzle. I checked in at the office, got a visitor badge, and found her classroom. Mrs. Patterson, her third-grade teacher, was writing something on the board when I knocked. She turned, surprised, then smiled when she saw my visitor badge. "Mr. Webb, Emma will be so excited you're here. I wanted to talk to you about her. How she's been doing. I know the past few months have been hard on her." Mrs. Patterson gestured for me to sit at one of the small desks. I felt ridiculous, my adult frame folded into a chair designed for an 8-year-old. "Emma's a bright girl," Mrs. Patterson said. "Very creative, loves to read. But yes, she's been struggling since your accident. She's been distracted in class. Anxious. She asks to go to the nurse's office frequently, usually when she's feeling overwhelmed." The guilt was a physical weight. My choices had done this to her. My need to be a hero to strangers had turned my own daughter into an anxious child who couldn't focus in school. "I'm making changes," I told her. "I've left the fire department. I'm teaching at the academy now. Regular hours. I'm going to be more present in her life." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "That's wonderful. Emma talks about you constantly, you know. Every writing assignment that asks about heroes, she writes about you. Every family tree project, you're prominently featured. She loves you very much, Mr. Webb. She just needs more of you." The bell rang. Kids started flooding back into the classroom from recess. Emma was in the middle of the crowd, talking to a friend, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. She looked up and saw me sitting at the desk. Her whole face transformed. Pure joy. "Daddy!" She ran over, throwing her arms around me. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you. And I wanted to walk you home after school today, if that's okay." "Really? You can do that?" "I can do that today and every day if you want." Her smile could have powered the whole city. Other kids were staring, whispering. Emma introduced me to her friends, proud and excited. "This is my dad. He's a firefighter. Well, he was. Now he teaches other firefighters." We walked home together that afternoon. Emma talked non-stop about her play, about her friends, about a book she was reading, about everything and nothing. I just listened, really listened, not distracted by thoughts of the next call or the next emergency. At her apartment building, Sarah was waiting on the steps. She looked surprised to see us together, then pleased. "Mommy, Daddy walked me home from school," Emma announced. "I see that. That's nice." Sarah's eyes met mine over Emma's head. There was a question there. "Is this real? Are you really doing this?" I nodded. It was real. "Can Daddy stay for dinner?" Emma asked. Sarah hesitated. We'd been divorced for 6 months. The wounds were still fresh. But she looked at Emma's hopeful face and relented. "If he wants to." "I'd love to," I said. We ate spaghetti in Sarah's small dining room, the three of us around a table that felt both familiar and strange. Emma did most of the talking, telling us about the play, about her lines, about how nervous she was. Sarah and I caught each other's eyes occasionally, sharing small smiles, finding brief moments of the connection we'd once had. After dinner, I helped Emma practice her lines. She was playing a townsperson in a production of Our Town, one of those classic plays they always did in elementary schools. Her part was small, but she took it seriously, practicing her inflections and gestures. "You're going to be amazing," I told her when we finished. "Are you really going to be there tomorrow? You promise?" "I promise. Front row. I'll be the one embarrassing you by clapping too loud." She giggled. "You can't embarrass me, Daddy. I want you to clap loud." Sarah walked me to the door when it was time to leave. We stood in the hallway, the sounds of the apartment building around us. Someone's television too loud. A baby crying somewhere above. Normal life sounds. "Thank you for today," Sarah said. It meant a lot to her. To both of us. I meant what I said. I'm going to be there from now on. Not just for the big things. For the everyday things too. I hope so, Marcus. I really do. But I've heard promises before. This time is different. Why? What changed? How could I explain it? The little girl who may or may not have been real. The moment of clarity in the flames. The promise I'd made to a hallucination or a ghost or my own subconscious. The realization that I'd been choosing the wrong thing over and over. "I almost died," I said simply. And in that moment, all I could think about was Emma. About all the time I'd wasted. All the moments I'd missed. I don't want to miss any more. Sarah's eyes were shining with unshed tears. Good. Because she needs you. And honestly, so do I. Not as a husband anymore. But as a co-parent. As someone who shows up and follows through. I will. I promise. I left feeling lighter than I had in months. The rain had stopped and the Seattle evening air was crisp and clean. I drove back to my new apartment, smaller than what I was used to, but close to Emma's school. Close to the life I was building. That night, I unpacked the boxes from the station. Most of it went into the storage unit, but I kept a few things. My first helmet. A photo of my training class. A commendation from a rescue early in my career. I hung them on the wall of my small home office, not prominently, but present. Reminders of who I'd been, but not defining who I was now. The next evening, I arrived at Emma's school at 6:25. Early, as promised. The auditorium was filling up with parents and families. I found a seat in the third row, close enough to see clearly. I saved a seat for Sarah, who arrived 10 minutes later with Emma's grandmother. The lights dimmed. The curtain opened. The play began. Emma was nervous at first. I could see it in how she held herself, in her slightly shaky voice when she delivered her first line. But she pushed through. By her second scene, she'd found her confidence. She spoke clearly, moved naturally, even got a small laugh from the audience with her delivery. I was so proud I thought I might burst. This was my daughter. Smart, creative, brave. And I was here to see it. Finally, I was here. After the play, parents crowded backstage. Emma found me immediately, still in her costume. "I did it," she said, jumping into my arms. "You were perfect. Absolutely perfect." Other parents congratulated their kids. Teachers mingled. It was chaotic and loud and normal. So beautifully normal. Sarah took pictures of Emma and me together. Emma's grandmother, who'd barely spoken to me since the divorce, gave me a hug. "I'm glad you're here," she said simply. 2 weeks later, I started at the Fire Academy, teaching classroom sessions on fire behavior, search and rescue techniques, equipment operations. The recruits were young, eager, full of the same passion I'd had 12 years ago when I started. I saw myself in them. The desire to help. The need to be needed. The addiction to the adrenaline. During a break on my third day, one of the recruits approached me. A young woman named Amanda Chen, 24 years old, top of her class physically. "Can I ask you something, sir?" she said. "Of course. I heard about what happened. The fire where you got injured. They say you went after someone who wasn't really there. Is that true?" I'd known this question would come eventually. The story had spread through the department. Some people thought I was a hero. Others thought I'd lost it. Most didn't know what to think. "It's true," I said. "I heard a child calling for help. I went after her. The apartment was empty. She wasn't real. But you thought she was." "In that moment, yes. I was oxygen deprived, under extreme stress. My brain created what I needed to hear." Amanda was quiet, thinking. "Do you regret it?" Did I? I'd been injured. I'd ended my active duty career. I'd traumatized my daughter and ex-wife. I'd scared my crew. But I'd also had a revelation that changed my life. That forced me to confront truths I'd been avoiding. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. Because it taught me something important. This job will take everything from you if you let it. Your time, your relationships, your life. You have to know when to pull back. When to choose the people who know your name over the strangers you're trying to save. Both are important. But one is irreplaceable. Amanda nodded slowly. My girlfriend is worried about me joining the department. She's afraid I'll get hurt. Or that I'll become someone who's never home. Those are legitimate fears. This job is dangerous. It's demanding. It requires sacrifice. But you get to decide what you're willing to sacrifice. Don't let the job make that decision for you. Choose deliberately. Choose wisely. Over the following months, I fell into a new rhythm. Teaching during the day. Picking up Emma from school 3 days a week. Having dinner with her and Sarah occasionally. Going to Emma's soccer games on Saturdays. Reading with her before bed when she stayed at my apartment on weekends. It was quieter than my old life. Less adrenaline. No sirens, no fires, no racing into danger. Some days I missed it. Some nights I woke up thinking I'd heard an alarm, my body still conditioned to respond even though I wasn't on call anymore. But then Emma would call to tell me about her day. Or I'd help her with homework. Or we'd go to the aquarium on a Sunday afternoon, just the two of us, looking at the fish and talking about everything and nothing. Those moments filled something the fires never had. 6 months after leaving Station 18, I got a call from Morrison. Thompson had been injured in a warehouse fire. Nothing life-threatening, but he'd broken his arm and would be out for a couple months. They wanted to throw him a party at the station. Would I come? I brought Emma. She'd been asking to see the station for months. When we arrived, she stared at the engines with wide eyes, at the equipment, at the firefighters in their uniforms. Thompson was there with his arm in a cast, surrounded by the crew. "This is Emma," I introduced her. "Emma, this is Thompson. He's the guy who pulled me out of that fire." Emma looked up at Thompson with serious eyes. "Thank you for saving my daddy." Thompson crouched down to her level. "Your daddy saved 3 other people that night before I pulled him out. He's pretty brave." "I know," Emma said. "But I'm glad he's not fighting fires anymore. I like having him around." The party was good. Familiar faces, old stories, laughter. But I noticed something. The longer I was there, the more I realized I didn't miss it the way I thought I would. This had been my life, my identity, for 12 years. But it wasn't anymore. I'd become someone new. Someone who prioritized differently. Someone who'd learned, the hard way, what really mattered. As the party wound down and people started leaving, I found myself alone in the apparatus bay, standing in front of the engine I used to ride. Emma was with Sarah, who'd come to pick her up. I ran my hand along the red paint, remembering all the calls, all the fires, all the moments of terror and triumph. "You okay?" Thompson had come up beside me, his casted arm hanging at his side. "Yeah. Just saying goodbye, I guess. For real this time. Any regrets?" I thought about the question. Really thought about it. About the little girl who'd called my name in the flames. About the promise I'd made. About the life I'd built in the months since. "No," I said. "No regrets." That night, after dropping Emma off at Sarah's, I drove to Capitol Hill. To the lot where the apartment building had stood. It had been demolished, the burned-out structure too dangerous to salvage. The lot was empty now, surrounded by chain-link fence, waiting for whatever would be built next. I stood at the fence in the rain, looking at the empty space. This is where it had happened. Where I'd heard the voice calling my name. Where I'd found the girl who wasn't there. Where I'd fallen through the floor and thought I was going to die. Where everything had changed. "Thank you," I said quietly to the empty lot, to the memory of a little girl who might have been real or might have been my oxygen-starved brain's way of forcing me to confront myself. "Thank you for calling my name." The rain fell harder. I turned and walked back to my truck. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Good night, Daddy. I love you. See you tomorrow after school." I smiled and texted back. "See you tomorrow. I love you too." As I drove home through the wet Seattle streets, past the Space Needle lit up against the night sky, past the coffee shops and the tech offices and all the life of the city, I thought about names. About how the little girl had known mine. About how Emma called me Daddy. About how identity wasn't about what you did, but about who you were to the people who mattered most. I'd been Marcus Webb, firefighter, for 12 years. I'd saved lives. I'd run into burning buildings. I'd been a hero to strangers. But now I was just Marcus, Emma's dad. A teacher. An ex-husband trying to be a better co-parent. A man learning to choose presence over glory, connection over adrenaline, love over duty. And that, I'd finally realized, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The rain continued to fall as I drove home to my small apartment, close to my daughter's school, close to the life I'd chosen. Not the life I'd planned 12 years ago when I first put on the uniform. Not the identity I'd built my sense of self around. But the life I needed. The life Emma needed. The life that a little girl in the flames, real or imagined, had shown me I was missing. I parked and looked up at my apartment window. The lights were off. It was empty, waiting. Tomorrow I'd pick up Emma after school. We'd do homework together. Maybe grab ice cream if the rain stopped. Normal things. Everyday things. The kind of things I'd missed for too many years while chasing fires. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. I forgot to tell you. We're doing career day at school next month. Can you come and talk about being a firefighter teacher? Please. I smiled and texted back immediately. I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. Because that was the truth I'd learned in the flames. The truth a child's voice, calling my name, had forced me to hear. Being there was the only thing that really mattered. The only promise worth keeping. The only choice that led to anything real. I'd spent 12 years choosing fire over family. Running toward danger while running away from intimacy. Saving everyone except the people who needed me most. Not anymore. The little girl in the blue pajamas with stars, whoever or whatever she'd been, had given me a second chance. A wake-up call delivered in the worst possible moment, in the most terrifying circumstances. She'd called my name when I was lost in the flames. She'd reminded me who I really was beneath the uniform and the hero complex and the addiction to being needed. I was Marcus Webb, Emma's father. And finally, after 12 years and one catastrophic fire, I was learning how to be the person my daughter had always needed me to be. Not a hero. Just her dad. Present. Reliable. There. And as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my legs still aching slightly from injuries that would never fully heal, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The fire was out. The flames were gone. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I was exactly where I needed to be. Home.